Imagine this. A 17-year-old peasant girl with no military training, no education, and no experience in war, walks into a royal court, looks around a room full of nobles, and points directly at the hidden Prince of France. Within months, she would lead an army into battle, defeat the English, and change the course of a war that had lasted nearly a century. Her name was Joan of Arc, and her story sounds almost impossible, but it's real. The year is 148. France is collapsing. For nearly 100 years, France and England had been fighting one of the longest wars in European history. The 100 Years' War. Cities were falling, villages were burning, and the English army controlled huge parts of the country. Many people believed France was already lost, but far away from the battlefields. In a tiny village called Mai, a young girl was hearing voices. The girl was Joan of Arc. She was the daughter of farmers. Her life was simple: wake up at sunrise, work in the fields, care for animals, help her family survive. But when Joan was 13 years old, something strange happened. One afternoon, while standing in a field, she saw a bright light, and then she heard voices she believed were sent by God. They gave her a mission: not to pray, not to become a nun, but something far more unbelievable. They told her, "You must save France." Think about that for a moment. A teenage peasant girl who had never seen war decides she must lead an army. Most people laughed at her. Others thought she was crazy. But Joan was determined. She traveled across dangerous territory, through lands controlled by enemy forces, until she finally demanded a meeting with the French prince, the future king, Charles VII of France. The prince didn't believe her daughter's he decided to test her. Inside the royal court, he hid among a crowd of nobles. The real prince stood silently among them. The plan was simple. If Joan truly had divine guidance, she should be able to recognize him. Joan entered the room. She looked around. Hundreds of eyes were watching her. Then she began walking straight through the crowd without hesitation. She stopped in front of one man and bowed. It was the real prince. The entire court fell silent. Something extraordinary had just happened, and from that moment, everything changed. Joan was given armor, a horse, and soldiers, but something even more important happened. The hopeless French army suddenly had something they hadn't felt in years: hope. Joan carried a white banner, not a royal banner, not a war flag, but a banner filled with religious symbols. She told soldiers, "God is on our side," and strangely, they believed her. In 1429, one city held the fate of France. The English had surrounded it for months. If the city fell, France might lose the war forever. That city was the center of one of the most famous battles in medieval history, the Siege of Orléans. French generals were cautious, but Joan wanted to attack. The battle began. Arrows filled the sky. Cannons roared during the fight. An arrow struck Joan in the shoulder. She collapsed. Many soldiers believed their miracle leader was dead. But then, something incredible happened. Joan stood up, pulled the arrow from her armor, and returned to the battlefield. The soldiers saw it, and their fear disappeared. They charged forward. Hours later, the English army was retreating. Orléans was free, and France had its first major victory in years. After Orléans, Joan became a legend. People whispered that she had been sent by God, but she wasn't finished. Joan had one more mission. She wanted the prince crowned king. So the army marched north until they reached the ancient city of Reims. Inside the magnificent Reims cathedral, the prince was crowned king. He became a King Charles VII of France, and standing beside him was the teenage peasant girl who made it possible. But legends often face tragic endings. In 1430, Joan was captured during a battle. She wasn't captured by the English. She was captured by French allies of England, and they sold her to the enemy. The English feared her influence. Them. Joan was more dangerous than any army. They put her on trial. They accused her of witchcraft, heresy, and even wearing men's clothing. The trial was political. The verdict was already decided. In 1431, Joan was only 19 years old. In the city of Rouen, a crowd gathered in the town square. There stood the young woman who had once led armies. She was tied to a wooden stake. As the fire began to rise, she called out the name of Jesus, and then the flames consumed her. Joan of Arc died that day, but her story refused to disappear. Years later, her trial was declared unjust. Centuries later, the Catholic Church declared her a saint. Today, Joan of Arc is remembered as one of the most extraordinary figures in history, a farmer's daughter, a teenage soldier, a national hero, and a legend who proved something remarkable. Sometimes, the people who change the world are the ones no one expects. History is full of stories like this, stories that sound like myths, but are completely real. And if you enjoyed this one, you might want to hear about the other incredible women who changed history, because some of their stories are even more unbelievable than this one.